Hi everyone, my name is Corey and I am the Program Outreach and Education here at Support Within Reach. I am based out of the Bemidji office. Just want to do a little introduction, and I am the one that is going to be working with you guys. May have some guest speakers and other advocates do other portions of this, but as for the main person, I'm going to be the contact person for this and cost of 40-hour training that you're required as to be an advocate or intern, even a volunteer within Support Within Reach. All right, thank you, and let's get started. All right, so what we're looking at now is a map of our district service area. We serve Clearwater, Beltrami, Hubbard, Cass, Itasca, and Aiken. Itasca and Aiken are in our District 2. So like Sherry, Julianne, Katie are advocates in that area. We have an office in Park Rapids, which is Sam. Clearwater, which is Verena. Beltrami, we have Eve, Jen, myself, Michael, Ashley, me, and then Cass, we have Marcy. So we cover all of these areas. So for example, if you go onto the on-call calendar and you're on one night, you would be responding to any one of these locations. So it just kind of gives you the idea of the area we cover. Okay, so this next slide is just our basic agency information. We are a nonprofit. All of our funding comes through grants and our annual fundraiser. We've been in existence since 1989. We have all been previously known as the Sexual Assault Program, so SAP, so sometimes you'll hear that. We are trained advocates, staffs, and volunteers. We're available 24 hours a day. After office hours, it's our crisis line. And then Times Communications is what we use to do our after-hour calls. All of our services are free and confidential, which is amazing. Services are provided to women, children, and men. And all gender identities. So what do we do at Support Within Reach? We do quite a few different things. Crisis intervention, so when clients come in, we get a phone call, law enforcement calls us, hospitals call us, client in the middle of the night just needs to talk. Crisis intervention. Peer counseling, medical appointment, accompaniment, and advocacy. So when they go to the hospital to have an exam done, we can go with. Law enforcement advocacy, that's when there's any interviews, anything like that. Criminal justice advocacy, Jen is our criminal court advocate, but any other advocate can also do this with their clients. Assistance in obtaining protection and restraining orders, an OFP or HRO, if that sounds familiar to you. Support groups, follow-up assistance, and referrals to other outside community organizations. So our mission here at Support Within Reach, we follow 100%. It's something that our agency lives by and basically honors, just like any other company's mission statement. And so our mission is to reduce the impact and harm of sexual violence in the communities we serve. We serve a lot of communities, but we're just not thinking about communities in the area we live, such as like Bemidji, Park Rapids, Bagley, Walton Walker. We're thinking, the LGBTQ community. We have the American Indian community, especially in northern Minnesota, and just trying to be all inclusive for every type of community that there is out there. So sexual violence is our business, and that is what is our agency is surrounded by. But thinking that, it really matters to us and everybody when it comes to sexual violence, because it's not something that should be shoved under the rug. So when we're talking about sexual violence, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about child sexual abuse, molestation, sexual assault, stranger and non-stranger, sexual harassment, stalking, sexual exploitation, exposing, obscene phone calls, internet-related crimes, child pornography, and all these things we'll discover through this. We'll discuss through this 40-hour training. This is just a brief overview of what we'll be talking about. And most definitely, if you have any questions, just please feel free to ask and reach out. So, consequences of sexual violence. Again, this is just a total broad overview, and we will talk more about it through the weeks. And so, what are the consequences of sexual violence on the victim? Vulnerability. Just knowing this happened and how easily it could happen again. And, I think we're all vulnerable to certain things in life. And once you've been a victim of sexual violence, you are more vulnerable to have it happen again. Perception of the world is meaningless and incomprehensible, loss of spirituality. Why would God let this happen to me? Why would this happen to me? Why couldn't it happen to someone else? Just like not really understanding what is going on. Low self-esteem, confidence, self-view, self-talk. You're like, I'm a horrible person because I let this happen. Of course, they're not, but that's how they feel. Emotional distress, being anxious, nervous, hypervigilant, blame, anger is all completely normal. PTSD and other mental health issues. Medical problems, physical injury, suicide attempts is definitely something that we are concerned about. Gastrointestinal disorders, substance use, STDs, STIs, gynecological or pregnancy complications. So these are all just again, a brief overview of consequences of sexual violence on the victim. Working to restore normalcy. This comes just to trying to get the victim back on their feet, giving them support, empowerment, helping them with collateral and oftentimes competing issues. Maybe there's domestic violence in there too. Trying to decide what's more important to combat at the moment. And that could be a day-to-day moment kind of thing. One day the domestic violence is more, and the next day the sexual violence is more, So just trying to work through those issues. Validating, we're never ever going to blame a victim for what happened to them. Understanding and knowledge, that comes into play when you have to attempt to have empathy and walk in their shoes, but yet how to talk to them and how to help them. Just listen. Majority of the time, they just want to be listened to. They just want an ear. That's it. Provide all options. Review possible consequences. This isn't consequences on the victim. This is consequences for, say, if the offender is going to court, what could happen. Consequences, maybe just being real with them. If they start using drugs, I'm not going to tell you can't do it, but, I want the best for you, that kind of thing. Guidance in setting goals. Even if it's a short-term goal, in the end, it'll really help them just by trying to work on mini goals and big goals, depending on what they want to do. Reassurance, and then positive reinforcement. So within Support Within Reach, we have some teams and job description titles that you might hear often. We have a SMART team. So that is the Sexual Assault Multidisciplinary Action Response Team. You might hear WHO SMART, which is Hubbard, B SMART, which is Bemidji, C-Smart, which is CAS. So you might hear some of those terms, and that's what it is. So they go over policy protocols when it comes to working with like law enforcement and other agencies in their community. We have the sexual assault nurse examiner program, which is SANE, which you'll hear about like with the hospital calls for the SANE exam. You'll hear that, and then hospitals will do 13 and up, for ages 13 and up. Any under that, they'll go to the Family Advocacy Center here in Bemidji. So it's important to know these things, but again, a lot of this is just a brief overview, and we'll get more in depth. Support within reach. Our services continued from the previous slide. We accept volunteers and interns from BSU, Oak Hills, essentially any school that has an internship program. We also do prevention and education awareness programs, anywhere from preschool all the way up to high school, for chemically dependent, developmentally disabled, youth at risk, professional development, related issues surrounding sexual violence. This could be a nursing home teaching them about workplace harassment, sexual harassment, community awareness, and other programs available as requested. We have done community movies, community panels with professionals discussing topics surrounding sexual violence. So next we're going to talk about volunteer opportunities here at Support Within Reach. Both of our district areas allow volunteers to come in and kind of work side by side with us advocates. They're allowed to do crisis intervention, basic counseling after hours on our crisis line. Just an example, like office Monday through Thursday is open until 5 p.m. In that case, the volunteer would take any phone calls that come in on the crisis line after 5 p.m. Provide office support, filling files, putting new files together so that way we have those ready when clients come in. Accompany victims through the reporting process at emergency room and law enforcement interviews. If an advocate is not available and that person that's a volunteer is on call, they can go to the emergency room for the SANE exams and law enforcement interviews. Participate in Support Within Reach community awareness activities. This is always a help, as advocates are usually doing a lot of other footwork in there also. Fundraising and board membership. So when we're talking about the volunteer program, there are certain responsibilities that go along with, like, as if this was your regular, ordinary job. We are in hopes that it'll be a minimum of a 1-year commitment. We also understand that college-age kids will move on, especially if this is their last year in school, so the 1-year commitment is very hard. Maintain confidentiality of clients and advocates. There may be a good chance it may be one of your classmates in a college class that you might be responding to a call. Respond to clients in professional and supportive manner. Just being professional, you may not be a so-called advocate, and you might consider yourself just a volunteer, but how you act when you're with a client definitely makes a difference and reflects back on us as an agency. Serve an on-call minimum of 2 overnight shifts per month on the crisis line. Alert back to staff when called out to a home and maintain contact them throughout the call. We are only called to homes when law enforcement is there. Attend 12 ongoing training opportunities per year. We have kind of not done this in previous years just due to not having that many volunteers. But by providing this online, we are definitely going to be working harder at this. So you have continuous training, and sometimes these trainings you might be doing right along with us advocates. Complete a pre and post chef check-in. That might just sending a text to whoever is your backup and say, hey, I'm on with you, or your backup will text you and say, hey, I'm on with you tonight. If you need anything, let me know. After a shift, let your backup person know if you got any phone calls, what happened. That way you can just kind of debrief with them too and take a lot of the weight off your shoulders. Comply with support within REACH policies and philosophy, and adhere to the reporting requirements for clients. So there is some paperwork when it comes to being a volunteer. Just for an example, filling out an application, signing a confidentiality form. Around week 5 of this training, we'll do a background study. The end of training, we'll sign off on review of policies, a volunteer contract, and sign up for shifts for the on-call calendar. So when it comes to the training manual, that essentially you will see everything on here on the PowerPoints and throughout this training. But if you want a training manual, just get in contact with me, and as it says here, you can purchase the manual for $30 if you'd like to keep a copy of the manual for future use. Write it, highlight it, key items that you might find that we may not discuss here on this online training. And then we will provide a free electronic copy of this manual if you would like.